Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the delay there whilst we got ourselves ready. I'm really delighted to be here this afternoon to discuss breaking ground for sustainability. We're going to look at how we reconcile the need to respond to climate change and drive innovation at the same time as supporting our existing businesses. And we've got a fantastic panel to help us do that this afternoon. They're going to introduce themselves and then say a few words on my first question. So we will do that in a second. So the first question I really wanted to put to you all is which innovation in your area is most exciting to you at the moment? So if we start with Joanna at this end.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Jo Gilroy. I'm the Group Director of Sustainability at Balfour Beatty. We are the UK's largest construction business. Sure, a number of you have come across Balfour Beatty, especially if you've had the delight of trying to get past Junction 10 on the M25 recently. I can only apologise. So the innovation that I think is really exciting us at this moment in time would be no surprise if I talk about hydrogen. Hydrogen at the moment is very much presenting itself as a bit of a this could be a Hail Mary solution in terms of, if you take an industry like construction that is very familiar with using a single type of fuel, diesel, in their operations, being able to utilise, again, almost a single source of fuel would make it an easier way to switch from diesel to something that's more renewable. And I think what's particularly exciting about it at the moment is there's different opportunities with hydrogen, whether we're talking about hydrogen through fuel cell technology or as what we're trialling at the moment with the Scottish Government, which is we're using it as an injector fuel. So we've retrofitted a couple of our spreaders or gritters that work across the orbital motorway in Scotland. And in partnership with the Scottish Government, we're using hydrogen gas to effectively displace some of the diesel to lower the overall carbon emissions of that vehicle. And it's really quite exciting because of the learnings that are coming out of this technology, really subtle but important things like, for example, knowing now that the engine has got to be at an optimum temperature to get maximum displacement from the hydrogen, but equally you then can't have the engine get too hot because it is at the end of the day hydrogen. So it's working out a logistical plan that allows that gritter to run for its full duration and program that it would normally do, but in a slightly different way so that the engine maintains optimum temperature. So hydrogen's a really exciting fuel. It's one that we're continuing to experimenting around, but and I know that a few other panelists as well have had some experimentation with hydrogen, but I'll stop there.
Fantastic, thank you. So moving on to you, Jo, what's most exciting you?
Firstly, thanks very much for inviting me along on the panel. Really appreciate it. I'm Jo Park-Swift. I'm the CEO of Solivus, and we are lightweight solar specialists. So we specialise in the area of solar that doesn't contain any glass or any metal, so it's got a much lower carbon footprint, and it's much lighter in weight as well. There's 40% of buildings are unable to take the weight of conventional solar. Like the building here, we specialise in buildings like this, large buildings like aircraft hangars, sports stadiums, arenas, venues alike like that, and data centres as well. So there's either structural issues why they can't take conventional solar, or there's they don't want to penetrate the roof. So there might be a data centre inside, or there might be some food or drink being manufactured inside, and they don't want water dripping down. And we deal in very lightweight kind of material and industrial adhesives. So we glue onto the roof, and we get around all these issues that companies wouldn't normally be able to have solar. So the bit that makes it really exciting is actually the collaboration with other technology and helping companies decarbonise. One of the areas we're working with as well is helping construction decarbonise as well. So I'm in good company here with Jo because we're working together on projects, and we've already helped Balfour Beatty with lightweight solar on construction modular cabins for Balfour Beatty because those sorts of structures are unable to take solar either. And what we've done successfully, improved successfully, is using batteries with a backup diesel generator to significantly reduce the use of diesel and cut carbon, which was your main objective, but also helping saving money as well. Decarbonisation helps save money. So we've successfully proved that. But now we're going on a stage further with another project, which is using lightweight solar on the roof, a battery, and then a backup hydrogen fuel cell. So there's like zero diesel on the site at all. And we're working together on that project, and that is super exciting. One of the problems we have with big buildings like this is actually we can generate so much energy from the roof, you can't use it all in the building. So the biggest challenge for us is like, what do you do with the surplus? But that's where the really exciting bit comes in, because we're loving talking with battery tech about big buildings like this, how you play on the grid, how you can use the battery tech, use it in the evening, and then you've got these massive batteries on standby, and you can reserve part of the battery for certain times of the day and certain times of the year to take advantage of some of the facilities available on the grid to make extra money for the venues. So there's all sorts. It's this collaboration of tech that's helping decarbonise, but also creating value for companies through finance as well. Finance is another collaboration, wrapping it all in finance and just making it work for the customer. And all of that is super exciting.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So talking about big buildings, Lee, we're in a very big building here that you look after, and you've got the joint challenge of new projects and also the existing building. What's exciting you?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, my name's Lee Lacey. I'm the Facility Director here at XL London. I'm very fortunate to be in that role where I need to look after the existing building, the day-to-day running and the maintenance, but also looking longer and further ahead at the strategic planning. Alongside that role, we are extending down at the east end, putting another 25,000 square metres of venue space on there. And that's really exciting because that's being built to BREEAM Excellent standards. So it's really kind of setting the bar for us as a venue. And then moving forward is how do we then retrofit into what we know as phases 1 and 2, which is what we're sat in at the moment. I think what's exciting for us is that there's just no one solution to solving our problems here. We being here in the heart of East London, there are capacity issues coming into the venue, so we need to look further and beyond on how we can solve our problems. I think the key area that I find really exciting is microgrids. How do we bring all of these techs together, as Joe was just saying? We have a huge opportunity for solar, but we need to make sure we use it efficiently. So how can we bring all the other tech together? Then brings another challenge on real estate. The building's quite condensed. There's every kind of square inch is kind of used and utilised. So how do we make the space become readily available? So there's lots of challenges. I do think microgrids are the way forward for us. Hopefully wind power will come on in the next few years as solar has really advanced in the last kind of 10 plus years. So really open to kind of how those diverse solutions can solve all of our problems.
Fantastic, thank you. And we're going to go up in scale now. So we're going up from a very big building to the city scale. Zena, what's exciting you about cities?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. Great pleasure to be among amazing speakers. My name is Zaina Nazer. I'm co-founder of Cities Forum. So we started Cities Forum about 6 years ago at University of Oxford. We're advisors for cities to become smarter and more sustainable. So that was the main idea. As Lee mentioned, there's no one solution. So I've worked with cities, government, and companies on building smarter city, on building smart mobilities for over 20 years. And besides working for Cities Forum, I'm also external expert for the UK Department for Transport, and also chair for the ITS UK road user charging, where I believe there should be no free road. So our approach is to try to reduce the car usage. We work with autonomous vehicles. So with the new act of autonomous vehicle at the moment coming up in the UK, with the electric mobility. So we've done some projects with the European Union on electric mobility solution around in Europe, as well as in different places in Kenya and many other places. So yeah, my passion and my focus is on how to use technology for moving people in a sustainable way, but also most importantly is to reduce the car usage while we're promoting the micro-mobility, which micro-mobility, for those who are not familiar with it, electric bicycle, electric scooters, and basically using active travel, where the UK government is very keen on promoting the active travel and reducing the car usage, so with congestion charging, which is my passion as well, and also trying to maybe make parking, especially in city centers, very, very difficult. So we work on solutions that we provide for cities and officials, transport organizations, to make the mobility and transport equitable, fair, and accessible to everyone, while being basically sustainable and smart. So that's our main passion and interest.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'm going to come back down this end now. We've heard about some fantastic technologies at all sorts of different scales. So we're going to have a bit of a conversation about what's stopping us all from implementing those today. So we'll start again with Joanna at this end. What do you think the barriers are that are stopping us from really getting on and implementing these solutions?
I think there's probably sort of three to draw on. I mean, firstly, I think technology is moving at such a pace. We've got a bit of a decision-making paralysis going on. Nobody wants to make the wrong decision, and particularly in construction, for a lot of the plant equipment that we purchase, this is expensive pieces of kit. They're often on long lease cycles across 10 years. And you're trying to guess today what technology you're going to need, not just in the immediate term, but then 5 and 10 years down the line. And exactly what Joe spoke about, we're going to rapidly move from having a single source of fuel, diesel, to having multiple sources of fuel, whether it's hydrogen, electric, solar, wind. There's going to be a real sort of plethora of solutions. So what is the right choice today? So I think everyone's a little bit struggling on what piece of kit do we invest in, and is that the right one? Because if we get the decision wrong, it's an expensive decision to make. Expensive mistake to have made. We need effective policy as well that I think supports a lot of this transition, because again, I'm going to draw on a point that Joe made. We've got the ability to put these solar panels on the roofs, and we can fundamentally generate more electricity than the building requires. But then getting that back onto the grid so that others can use it, we're not moving fast enough in terms of that. Upgrading the grid and making sure that we can really maximise the use of the renewable energy that we are able to generate. And if we look at some of the policy mechanisms that we've had in the past, when the government wanted to support the farming sector, they came up with, the levy around red diesel. So diesel was cheap and easy to afford and use. But we're not seeing the same policies coming through that are then enabling the rapid development of, for example, a supply chain around hydrogen. We are woefully behind our European counterparts on this when we look at everything that in particular Germany's doing to really invest in their supply chain around hydrogen. They are moving at lightning speed, and we are at risk of being left behind. And then the other thing that I think is a barrier to progress that we talk a lot about sustainable solutions, but quite often we will jump on a bandwagon, and we'll hear about something that's sustainable, and we'll think that's it, that's the one solution, and we'll just go hell for leather on it. And we've done it a couple of times, again under Tony Blair. They wanted to promote low carbon, so they got us all to switch away from petrol to diesel, and nobody thought for a moment about particulate matter, and we switched back. Then we had the ocean plastic, and it was right, we need to stop using single-use plastics, so we're going to move to oxy-biodegradable plastics that are now rapidly moving to being banned because of the environmental damage they cause. So when we investigate these sustainable solutions, it's really important that no matter which one we're talking about, we've got to do our due diligence and have open, honest and transparent conversations around what the trade-offs actually are. You know, a number of these different fuel options have got fantastic benefits, but there's also a trade-off somewhere because there's no ultimate sustainable solution. And this is why having partnerships like the one that we've got with Solvis is so critically important, because we can have these open, honest and frank conversations and ultimately work towards a solution that then starts to become more and more sustainable as we invest in it, as we use it, as we work out how we can make it better, reinvest again, etc., etc. So effective policy, trying to move away from decision-making paralysis and having those frank conversations around what's sustainable, what's not, and how we can work with our supply chain partners to make our solutions more sustainable.
Fantastic, thank you. And Joe, you must come up across this problem every day, that you're trying to persuade clients to take on an innovative technology, but they don't have the use cases and the track record that perhaps some older technologies have. How do you address that? And is that the main barrier that you're seeing, or are there others as well?
Yeah, I mean, that has been a barrier, but especially at the beginning, trying to convince sports stadiums and whatnot something completely new. Actually, I've got to say, Balfour Beatty were amazing. You made a decision in 4 weeks. You were really fast.
I'll find out who did that. And
yeah, that was incredible. But yeah, trying to get a big structure, you know, like this. It's never done anything like this before. It's new tech. You know, a few years ago, it was really difficult. And some very brave organisations. A shout out to Northampton Saints that have just won the Premiership. You know, maybe we gave them some luck, I don't know, but shout out to Northampton Saints because they were the first to be brave enough to do it in terms of sports stadiums. And so now that we've done a few, it is getting easier. But the barriers that we found to prevent us actually putting more solar on the roof, and Northampton Saints is an example of that, because actually we could have put more on that roof, but they can't use more in the building. So there's a really good example of a data centre that we're working with at the moment. It's a big industrial estate all around them. They literally, if you put solar on every roof in that industrial estate, they would soak up everything. Data centres are so energy hungry, but because of the tariffs that are on the moving the electricity from building to building, even though it's really close, it's the same tariffs as moving it hundreds of miles, and that annoying policy prevents a lot of this technology from being used more widely. So again, it's the policy, and that's like pretty easy to change and then help the country decarbonise. So it's something definitely to be lobbying the government, that whoever it is that comes in, is that they should be really moving to change that and to help this wider adoption of this local energy generation. And the grid, of course, our antiquated grid system needs some investment, but actually policy is easier to fix, and that will probably make a bigger difference than I shouldn't say that out loud, but for us, it's not necessarily always the grid. It's the policy preventing this extra installation. So, yeah, I think there's a lot that could be done without too much cost and hassle, but the grid definitely, obviously, needs upgrading.
Yeah, fantastic. So moving on to you, Lee, obviously you're the client who's making some of these decisions about implementing new sustainable innovations. How does that feel from where you're sitting, and what are the things that make you nervous, or the things that you have to just do to get past it?
Yeah, as both the ladies have said, there's multiple barriers. There's not just one barrier. We're kind of the victim of our own success here, whereby we are, a successful venue. That means that we're working in a live environment, so making change while we've got day-to-day events constantly coming into the venue and having those kind of downtimes is really difficult. That's probably our number one. Finance will always be a barrier. We're fortunate we've got good parent company, we've got good investment, and we've got a long-term strategy. So we have got that. It's then finding how we're going to prioritise that and spend the money wisely. But once you overcome those barriers, then it becomes really exciting, and the opportunity is amazing. It's just making sure it's the right fit. Yeah, there's always going to be a concern. You make the wrong decision. We've predominantly invested in the venue in the past in the right areas. I think simple things like LED lighting, that's always going to reduce your consumption. Changing control systems, movement sensors. We've done the simple things, and now it's time to move on to the next stage and be quite fundamental, I think. But yeah, it's just echo what I said earlier. It is multiple barriers, and we're fortunate, but it's opportunity and it's exciting.
Yeah. So just building on that, I mean, are there some decisions that you've taken that have felt quite brave? I think we're going to come back to bravery a bit later on, but are there some decisions where you've had to just be brave, and how have you persuaded others in your organisation to go with you?
I don't think we've reached that point yet. We've done the logical elements. We've invested in a dedicated sustainability manager. Unfortunately, she can't be with us here today. She's travelling around Japan, lucky soul. We've invested in an energy manager. We've invested in metering. So our energy manager is in that process of collating the data, learning how the building breathes on a day-to-day basis, looking at our baseline data. So we're doing the obvious, I think, I would say at the moment, just building up and capturing the data, looking at what is the low-hanging fruit. And I think now we're reaching that pivotal point. Where do we invest in solar on the roof, and how does that fit out our long-term strategy? But that's all coming together nicely at the moment. So it's, as I said, exciting times.
Brilliant. So Zaina, we've heard about sort of more systems thinking, about getting the right policy and decision makers. Obviously, as we expand out into transport, there isn't a single decision maker, it's lots of individuals as well as all of those policy things. What are you seeing as the big barriers to really moving us forward?
So, thank you, Lisa, and thanks to Joanna, Joe, and Lee for your input. And what I would like to add is the responsibility of the big corporate, of the end consumer, and for the government. So I was sharing a morning session on the Sustainable Goal Development for US SDG, and all the panelists agreed that there's a very high responsibility on big corporates. So I would like to add to that responsibility of the end consumer. So basically, when it comes to travel and making decisions, whether you can travel, let's say from London to Amsterdam, you can fly or you can take the train. Now, if you think about it, it would take same time. So between flying to get to the airport before, and the time to the airport, and time from the airport to your hotel destination, as opposed to traveling from center to center by train. So even if it's like 6 hours by train or 5 hours, eventually it will be same time. But then, so basically in terms of time, it's similar. But when it comes to cost, this is where I put responsibility on basically the train operator, because if you compare, you can easily travel from London to basically Amsterdam for £40 as opposed to £300 by Eurostar. So the thing is, again, it's not fair to put all this responsibility on the end consumer, where they have to pay more than triple the price to use a sustainable solution. So this is from one side. From the other side, when it comes to government, I like to always give the example in Germany. So what they have done in Germany, they have done a pilot study where they had 3 months of €9 per month, where you can pay €9 per month and use all of the rail system, including the underground, the buses, the train, all over Germany. And so that was a great move from basically the transport operator to encourage the public transport. In Germany, now it's back to €49, which is still very affordable. If you compare that to London, you can easily pay £13 a day. And that's very expensive. It's not fair. So this is where the government needs to subsidize the public transport in London. So it's a mix of responsibilities that needs to be taken into consideration between subsidizing, prioritizing the public transport. There's no question that the public transport, clearly you've seen a decline in use during COVID, which is understandable because it was sold in a bad way, and it was like only travel if it's absolutely necessary to take the train or take the bus. So then what people were driving, so that was not very good. So now we're back to normal. I mean, COVID clearly was a fantastic example for us to kind of reconsider our decision, our choices. So now we're back to normal, but it's not necessarily a better normal, unfortunately. I mean, we're back to worse than before. So there are a lot of things we can do. Government has very high responsibility. Clearly, a big corporation needs to pay a little more because they can't afford. I mean, they spend, I mean, even from the speaker from my session before, the percentage of board meeting and as opposed to real result is so high that there's no point to do all these meetings and you have all these plans and all these ideas and no solution. I mean, we're still where we are. So we need to have more action and less meetings. So.
Fantastic, thank you. So perhaps I'll stay with you for a minute. And it'll be interesting to get your view and then we'll hear from others. So I mean, a lot of the decision making is based on data and having good data to be able to make that decision. In an area of innovation where data is scarce because there haven't been that many attempts at deploying technologies, do you think that companies should be really holding on to that data to keep a competitive advantage, or have they got an obligation to be sharing it so we can all move forward?
If it's going to be helpful, and I do that a lot with different operators, so whether it's transit operator or because I also work with transport as a control center where they're collecting data of drivers. So there must be definitely some communication for the best of the system usage and for the end user. So definitely holding on to the data is not right, and it should be shared. Singapore is the best example where they provide data in public for the use, so while keeping in mind the privacy of the users, so it's only the data that is relevant to the solution and to improving the system. So the point is definitely data should be shared. There must be a way or a policy from the government to enforce sharing data in the basically the purpose of improving and having better solutions. So holding on to the data is not good for anybody. Whether they want to sell them, there's an agreement to kind of, because it's still your data, you're spending time to collect the data. So there must be some kind of agreement where the data should be shared in order to improve and better the system. And I want to add also, we work a lot, again, back to the congestion charging. So now you see that only people who can afford to pay the congestion charging, they get into the central London. So this brings you to the inequality, which is also something to be considered. So inclusion, equality, and fairness should be taken into consideration when it comes to these systems.
Lovely. So does anybody else want to come in on the data point? How do you manage that trade-off between probably really wanting to get data from others, but not necessarily wanting to share all of your data? Has anybody got anything that they'd like to add on that topic?
I mean, I agree. I think it's really important to share data. I think that is always going to be, if I just play devil's advocate for a moment, I think trying to get, saying to big businesses, you have to hand over data. I appreciate it's your competitive advantage, but you have to hand it over. I think that's going to be a very challenging conversation that's not going to go down well, and if anything, would probably put a lot of executive decision makers off being a sustainable business, because they'd look at it and say, well, if I have to do this, that's ultimately going to erode my profitability. So it's a conversation that has to happen delicately, and I think in a way that does involve handing over data that does benefit the common good. So I think, a couple of things that we've done is we have there's a lot of experimentation going on with different fuels on site. So we publish a series called our Net Zero Diaries, and it very much shares all of our successes and, quite frankly, all our failures. Every time we've tried something and it hasn't worked, we put that out in the public domain for our competitors and our customers to know about. Say, basically, let us share you some time. So that qualitative data is, I think that's quite helpful to kind of try and help everyone else speed up and say, fundamentally, let us save you some money. Don't invest in that. It didn't work for the following reasons. But another sort of
quite difficult, isn't it?
Because
I can think there's a lot of data for our business I probably wouldn't want to share. Being totally honest, because we've worked really hard to get that data, and we wouldn't really want to kind of give it away so that competitors could use it and copy it.
And we're spending money with you because you've got the IP, and that's, what I mean. Yeah,
exactly. But I'm sure that we do have data that we would be prepared to share that would be helpful. I'm interested to know, what does Singapore, what data do they share?
They share all the transport data, so people's behavior, so number of users for the public transport, clearly the number of cars entering. So mainly transport data. I mean, I'm sure maybe other data as well, but in my field, I focus on transport, and it's related to helping to improve the system, kind of doing the demand management plans in order to kind of understand the behavior, because a lot of things is based on behavior. For example, on the autoroute, on the highway, basically you could find a sign where it says construction ahead, so take junction 1. Not everybody does that, so because everybody thinking the others will do that, so then there will be traffic or congestion in that junction. So I'll just keep going on the highway. So there is a lot of psychology taken into consideration. So the data would be just to kind of analyze and understand the traveler's behavior. So that's mainly what it is.
Yeah, fantastic. Right, so we're going to open up to you now in the audience and see if anyone has any questions for our panel. I think you do need to speak into a microphone, so I'm just looking at our technical colleagues here as to whether there's a roving mic handy. Has anybody got a question that they would like to ask the panel?
Tell you what, I'm going to be proactive and I'm going to step down with my microphone, because by the
Brilliant.
time we wait, we'll be out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, my question is to you as well. So
It's to me. Got it. Sorry. Back up.
Yeah, hi, I'm Pankaj. I'm from Melty Mindry ESG Consulting. Just touching upon the topic that we have here at hand, innovation in net zero buildings, right? So if you look at real estate, the stages of carbon is usually when you are in development, then operational carbon when the building is used, and then lastly, end of life carbon as well. Now, a lot of focus is on retrofitting in the operational carbon space. But my question to Joanna is, how do you tackle, or do you see any innovative ways in handling the embodied carbon while you are constructing the building itself?
Yeah, actually, most of the work we're doing around reducing the overall embodied carbon does actually happen at the point of design. And one of the debates that's going on at the moment, so we're not a designer, we have design agencies that we work with. It's called our Strategic Design Partnership, and it's the like of entities such as Atkins and WSP that do the design, and we work with them in order to understand, right, what does a building have to look like in order to be as low carbon as possible. And we've actually been partnering with Causeway to build so we have a cost estimating tool called Candy. So, effectively, if we use this amount of steel or this amount of concrete, what's it going to cost to make the building? And they're embedding into that a carbon factor. So alongside cost, we can then also calculate carbon, which means we can have really informed conversations with clients that say, I want the most sustainable building in the world. And we can then work with that tool and our strategic design partners to say, right, this is what it's going to cost, this is what we need to do, this is how you need to amend the design in order to make it the most sustainable building. But one of the really interesting debates that are going on at the moment is that we have some customers, for example, that are using certain architects and certain design houses that are pulling together schematics and designs that are fundamentally unachievable, and they then hand them over, and you get them, and you go, hold on, we can't possibly build that, because fundamentally, to achieve that low carbon concrete factor, the concrete itself is not going to have the structural integrity to hold up the building. So there is this governance challenge at the moment at the point of design. We don't do a lot of retrofitting because, to be perfectly honest, there's very little money in it. The smaller operators tend to do people that flip the houses very effectively. They tend to do more of the retrofitting. So we're focused more on the front end. That answers your question.
It's a great question, though, isn't it, about system thinking and the need for us to be building all of these things throughout the whole life cycle of an asset. So, fantastic question. Have we got any more questions from the audience?
Our lovely tech person has followed my lead and he's going around with the microphone. Thank you.
So this is working, isn't it? Hello, my name's Arjun. I work for KPMG. and it was something you mentioned actually, Joe, about the data and how you had worked very hard for that data, and it's obviously a USP and is competitive advantage for your company. And it got me thinking more about the there's almost a trade-off between to what extent do we keep this information for ourselves and use it to our company's advantage versus recognizing that a lot of these problems are they use this term wicked problems, don't they? It requires a connected solution between not just one organization but all of the stakeholders around it. It's not just the competitors, it's the customers and the regulators and so on. So it's an open question really, but I'm really curious to hear thoughts about how do companies navigate that need to retain that competitive advantage and continue to innovate and protect themselves, whilst also recognizing the need to collaborate in order to actually tackle some of these connected issues.
It is a real challenge for entrepreneurs. That is a brilliant question, and it's one of the most difficult things to do. And what it boils down to at the end of the day is people, and who you collaborate with, and who you work with, and who's actually a straightforward, true and good person or organisation, what has a good culture, and going to just collaborate well with you, and who you can trust at the end of the day. You do have to take a deep breath and just trust people and work with people and other companies and other organisations, and you have to say, look, we can do something in a really special way. We've got something really special here, and just trust that you can collaborate with them, and that's sort of choosing who you work with, and then like innovating a bit more, growing a bit more. I mean, you can have NDAs to your heart's content, but at the end of the day, it's whether you because some of those are not very effective. So you do have to really forge good relationships. It's down to me a lot of time to choose good companies to collaborate with and decide which ones we don't collaborate with. And that is really, really hard, because sometimes there's some amazingly powerful companies and you have to go, crikey, I'm not sure here. I don't feel safe. I'm not going to collaborate with you.
If I may add to that, sorry. Yeah, thank you. If I may add to that, the quality of the data you collect as well. So I'm doing my PhD at University of Southampton on LiDAR and safety of LiDAR for autonomous vehicles. And so LiDAR is like a radar, and it's collecting data, and it can collect a lot of useless data. So because it's rotating, I mean, depending on which type of LiDAR, but the one I'm talking about, it's rotating and it's collecting a lot of data that can be very confusing for the vehicle to make decisions. So the quality of the data is very important as well. So yes, you need a lot of data, but you need relevant data, and that is useful. So the quality, I just wanted to add that the quality is very important.
Just one devil advocate point, if you like, that I think we sometimes lose track on or lose focus on when it comes to competition is if a business makes a decision that they've invested in something, they've got some fantastic data and it's their IP, and they decide to retain it as a point of competitive advantage, that competition for the rest of the supply chain can actually be healthy, because you are fundamentally forcing your competitors to be better. Because if they're not, they're going to lose market share, and nobody wants to do that. And we've got a few examples. I mean, whether you're talking about Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, they're both going to be the first to land on Mars, but they're not sharing their secrets. But the competition between them is pushing their various space agencies to be better. So it is a delicate balance, but I think sometimes competition can be healthy and it can be productive, especially if, often, and Solvis, you're in such a space where I think this is quite true, you're only ever a heartbeat in front of your competitors, because you're trailblazing, you're setting the direction of travel and the agenda, and everyone's frantically trying to catch up with you to be better than you, because then of course they've got something that you might want, and it's this constant exchange of if you like, this constant productive battle to be the best. So I think sharing data, absolutely, but we mustn't lose track of the fact that competition can be healthy, and the way that you can stimulate that is to retain a couple of secrets.
If I can just, add on the Elon Musk and the Tesla. Basically, yes, Tesla, they have this kind of secret recipe of autonomous vehicle. They don't use LiDAR system to collect data. So they had their own computer generating system. And they're proven to be the highest number of cars with accident in the US. So now they're being basically, so you see trouble. So yes, you have your secret recipe and you don't share anything. But now you can see that with all this innovation, when you're doing you're being so secretive about your solution. So then when you start seeing results on the highest number of car accidents for autonomous vehicles, this is where you start questioning that maybe it's time for you to share your solution or share what you're doing, because it's not, eventually they will be caught. I mean, when you come and talk about innovation and secret recipe, eventually you will be caught at some point.
Well, it mustn't be a toxic one. No, like that. I'm assuming it's a honest and true innovation, and that's why I use the space example rather than the Tesla vehicle example.
That was a good example.
I think this just shows how complicated this topic is, really, and getting that really delicate balance between innovation and trust and collaboration, particularly in the built environment where things are so complex. So we've got one more question over here.
I'm going to do my party trick. This lady's being ignored. Excuse me. This is where I fall off the stage in my heels. Just everybody applaud if I do.
There's a question.
Thank you. My name is Kirsten. I work for a waste management company called Recora here in London. And one of our USPs is that we go into companies and we tell them essentially the best strategies to manage their waste the most environmentally. So we work with facility directors like Lacey or other facility directors at large tower buildings to help them manage their operational waste. And one of the issues that we have is that the largest decision that you make when it comes to waste is procurement. And, we have all these exciting ideas, like we can take your waste and we could recycle it into construction materials, and then maybe you could buy it back and use that in your buildings. But there is no communication between those different departments from, you're saying about the design side, and then it comes down to the construction, the facilities management, the waste operator, the recycler. So my question is, how would you go about setting a kind of engagement strategy across this supply chain, which is essential to actually create that circularity within a company that we're all looking for? Thank you.
Fabulous. Great question. Lee, do you want to give us some thoughts on that one?
Yeah, sure. So, ironically, we are investing heavily in our waste team and enhancing the structure because we feel we could do a lot better. There's a lot of events that come into the venue. Some are kind of clued up, like Reset Connect, and want to engage with us, want to be better, want the metrics on a year-by-year basis, and that's driving us also to want to be better, want to provide better returns, better waste streams, but also better messaging, so we can take that across every single event. So certainly events that are not so clued up and are not so concerned. So there is a big drive from our side as a venue, and we are seeing that really change across the whole event industry.
And I think also it comes down to how you build your in-house sustainability capability in your teams. So for our sustainability team, because it was a relatively newly formed team, I don't just have environmental professionals or social professionals in the team. I've got engineers, I've got procurement, I've got commercial, and I've got HR, and all of those individuals I've got IT. Gosh, I'm trying to remember them all. These are individuals that have come from other functions that have wanted to develop their careers with a sustainable leaning, so they've joined the function. And because we now have a very intimate working relationship with our procurement team. So when it came to retendering our waste contract, for example, we work side by side with them, and we work side by side with HR and IT, etc. Because sustainability has got to permeate all elements of a business. But if you only have a certain type of individual in your sustainability team that only speaks a certain type of language, then you're not going to be able to properly communicate with your other stakeholders, to your excellent point of joining the chain up.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we are seeing a lot as well. in the work that we do with clients. The big challenge for most businesses now is to really operationalise ESG right the way through their businesses. So most organisations now have got a strategy, most organisations have got some things happening, but not every organisation has got to what you were just talking about, where actually every single person in every role knows what their job is around sustainability and how it all fits together. So I think we've got time for one more question before we just do some closing comments. Anybody want to have a...
I'm Neve. I'm a work experience student here. And I'm wondering what you guys think businesses' responsibility is to make the future more sustainable for young people.
Joe? Well, we do see large companies coming to us to say, can you help us? And one of the reasons is they want to attract talent. I can think of a really big bank that was losing people over to high-tech, renewable sort of clean company, and they were losing talent. So I think you guys are kind of forcing it. So I think they have to, if especially the large companies, to be able to attract talent, they've got to be able to show their ESG credentials. So, keep going with that passion is what I would say. I think you're doing it yourself. Am I right or not?
Yes, definitely. And as a parent of children who are starting off in their career, they're kind of driving that thought change and that desire to leave a legacy. And there may not be a legacy of actually achieving much, but it's the legacy of wanting to change and changing kind of the overall kind of desire to be better.
And I think that's really interesting. We're working with one business at the moment that's family owned, and the question for them is not what's value in the short term, but what's value for the grandchildren. And I think that's probably a question that would be good for all of us to think about a little bit more and be extending that decision-making time frame out, which probably addresses some of the issues that we've been discussing. So we've got just a few minutes left. I'm going to start with Zaina at this end. If you had one thing that you'd like to ask everybody here in the audience today to go and do at the end of the event today, what would your ask be of the community we've got here?
So I'd like to also, with my last, let's say, key points, I'd like to answer your question about young people. So it's about education. It's about educating them to know that they don't own the road. So that when they drive, they need to be aware and conscious of others around them, to be responsible when they're using the scooter, because scooters are making a lot of mess now with the policy not being put well in place. And clearly affordability. So we provide you with affordable transport solutions to help you move around. So it comes with education. So I think that education when it comes to road safety, when it comes to usage of the road, when it comes to using more the public transport, when it comes to respecting the policy and the rules about using bicycles and just to be creative and innovative and stay cool.
Fantastic. Lee, what's your challenge to the audience?
I think it's doing something is better than doing nothing. Looking from the venue perspective, we're fortunate we've got really good backing here, we've got good ambition here. Other venues won't be so lucky. So it's do something. Don't worry about being criticised by doing the wrong thing. As Joanne said earlier, you are kind of up against making a mistake that you might come to rue. But it's then taking your bosses, your businesses on that journey. Try to think of other ways of taking them forward and getting the message across and embedding that sustainability kind of drive throughout the business.
Fantastic. Thank you. Joe, how about you?
Well, I think it's just sort of trying to think where a lot of the solutions that we've been discussed today can be applied. And from a selfish point of view, if you see any buildings where you know the owners that have got very large roofs and you're curious why they haven't got solar and wondering why, we might have a solution.
Brilliant.
Shameless plug. But well deserved. For me, it's very much just stress test sustainable solutions. Everybody's jumping on the sustainable bandwagon. We're all trying to find that ultimate solution, and we are in an era where too quickly feelings are becoming fact in the absence of knowledge, and we're pursuing certain solutions that have some serious questions around them, and we need to be willing to have open and honest conversations about solutions that have got some elements that are sustainable, but there's also some trade-offs. And I think, one of the big debates we've got going on in the construction sector at the moment is around HVO. Is it sustainable? Is it not? And if you buy it at face value, it's low carbon, it's 98% less carbon at the point of burn. But the question is, where is it coming from? Where is the visibility of the supply chain? Is it causing deforestation in the supply chain? These are questions that need to be asked. So for everybody, if you're pursuing a sustainable solution, ask the questions. What makes it sustainable? Well, because it's biodegradable. Great. Why is that sustainable? Well, because it will break down. Great. Why is that sustainable? Keep pushing to find the actual answers and find the trade-offs, because we fundamentally don't have the time to make the mistakes that we've made in the past, as we did with oxy-biodegradables and as we did with diesel engines. We don't have the time anymore. We have to be much more forensic in what we're going for and be very honest with our stakeholders and our shareholders and our supply chain around what works, around what doesn't work, what's going to be a short-term, medium and long-term solution. So stress test.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, I'm going to try and sum that up now, and I think actually that last segment gives us some really good things to take away. So we're asking all of you now to go out of this room today and do a number of things. We're asking you to educate, we're asking you to communicate, we're asking you to innovate and collaborate.
Buy solar panels.
We're asking you to ask loads of questions, but most of all, we're asking you to be brave and do something. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.